Welcome to Heartbreaker, your love radio.
It was a sunny Sunday afternoon in a bustling suburb of Chicago. In the spacious backyard of a house, a lively barbecue was taking place after an exciting soccer game among friends. The smell of grilled meat filled the air, mixed with the sound of laughter and animated conversations. Music from the 90s played in the background, giving a nostalgic touch to the gathering. Nicholas, a 28-year-old tall and athletic man, was at ease among his friends, celebrating the team's victory. He held a cold beer while talking about the most thrilling moments of the match. As Nicholas discussed the game's last play with Paul, a longtime friend, he noticed a woman he didn't recognize. She was standing by the grill, chatting with a small group. It was Livia, a 26-year-old woman with brown hair and expressive eyes. Her posture seemed distant and uninterested, which immediately caught Nicholas's attention, but not in the way he expected. "Man, that play of yours was amazing," exclaimed Paul, admiringly. Nicholas smiled, raising his beer in a toast. Thanks, Paul. You were great on defense too." As he chatted, Nicholas couldn't help but glance at Livia occasionally. There was something intriguing about her, but her serious expression and lack of enthusiasm were disconcerting. Paul noticed Nicholas's interest and decided to intervene. Hey, Nicholas, come here. I want to introduce you to a friend," said Paul, pulling Nicholas closer to Livia's group. "Livia, this is Nicholas. He's the top scorer of our team." Livia lifted her eyes from the juice glass she was holding and offered a polite smile. Hi, nice to meet you," said Nicholas, trying to sound friendly. Hi, replied Livia, briefly and without enthusiasm, turning her attention back to the glass. Trying to engage Livia in conversation, Nicholas asked, "Do you like soccer?" Not really," Livia replied, looking away. Her cold response made Nicholas realize that the conversation might not flow as he had hoped. Even so, he tried once more. I see. So, what do you like to do on weekends?" Nothing special, I just like to relax," she answered with a shrug. With each brief and indifferent response, Nicholas felt his patience wearing thin. It was evident that Livia was not interested in engaging in the conversation, and he began to feel frustrated. Deciding it was best not to insist, he smiled politely and stepped back. Well, I hope you enjoy the barbecue," he said before returning to his friends. As he walked away, Nicholas commented to Paul about the disappointing interaction. Man, she's beautiful, but she seems really uninterested. I don't know if it's worth it," he said, shaking his head. Paul laughed and tried to cheer his friend up. Sometimes people just need time to open up. Give it a chance," Paul suggested. But Nicholas was already disheartened. He decided to focus on enjoying the company of his friends and celebrating the victory in the game, leaving his curiosity about Livia aside, at least for now. On Friday night in Chicago, the downtown area was bustling with life. In a cozy, dimly lit bar, people were chatting and having fun, creating a welcoming and familiar atmosphere. The place was full but not crowded, allowing conversations to be heard over the soft sound of ambient music. The dim lighting, with amber tones and candles on the tables, gave an intimate touch to the place. Nicholas, still wearing the suit from a long day at work, entered the bar looking for a place to relax. He was tired and wanted a drink to unwind before heading home. As his eyes adjusted to the low light, he spotted someone familiar sitting alone in a corner. Livia, the young woman he had met at the barbecue a few weeks before, was there, but this time, she looked different. Her face, usually animated, was downcast, and her eyes expressed deep sadness. Nicholas hesitated for a moment, remembering the disappointing interaction they had. However, something in him felt the need to approach. He walked over to Livia's table, feeling a mix of curiosity and concern. "Livia," he called softly, leaning in so she could hear him over the bar's chatter. Livia looked up, surprised to see Nicholas there. Nicholas?" Hi, she replied, trying to force a smile. Can I sit? He asked, pointing to the empty chair beside her. Livia nodded, and Nicholas sat down, observing her more closely. Are you okay? You look a bit sad. Livia sighed, looking at the glass in front of her. I had a fight with a friend. It's been a terrible night. Do you want to talk about it? Nicholas asked, trying to sound as sympathetic as possible. To his surprise, Livia began to open up. She talked about the heated argument she had with her best friend, involving a misunderstanding that had quickly escalated. As she spoke, her voice trembled occasionally, showing the depth of her frustration and sadness. Nicholas listened attentively, offering small consolations and validating her feelings. Sometimes friendships go through tough times, he said. I'm sure you'll work it out. But don't let it ruin your night. Livia smiled a bit more genuinely this time. Thanks for listening, Nicholas. It's been a long day. If you want, I can take you home, Nicholas offered. That way you can rest. Livia considered the offer for a moment before agreeing. I think that would be nice, yes. Thank you. They left the bar together, and Nicholas accompanied her to his car. During the ride, the conversation flowed more naturally. They talked about their days, their lives, and slowly, a connection began to form. Nicholas discovered that Livia was a much more complex and interesting person than he had initially realized. When they arrived at Livia's building, she hesitated before getting out of the car. Do you want to come up for a bit? We can continue the conversation inside. Nicholas accepted the invitation, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. In Livia's apartment, the conversation continued, but now in a more intimate tone. They sat on the couch, sharing stories and laughter, the atmosphere between them becoming increasingly charged with a subtle, but palpable tension. Eventually, the inevitable happened. A lingering look, an accidental touch that lingered. Without saying a word, they leaned into each other, and the kiss that followed was full of desire. The night culminated in a scene of casual sex, a mix of need and physical attraction, marking the beginning of something unexpected. When morning came, there was a sense of comfort and contentment in the air. Although they hadn't exchanged promises or declarations, both knew that something had changed. A connection had been made. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions for Nicholas and Livia. They began to go out frequently, exploring the charms of Chicago together. Each date strengthened their bond, revealing new layers of their personalities and creating shared memories that quickly became precious. On a sunny Saturday, Nicholas and Livia were strolling through Lincoln Park, enjoying the vibrant scenery and the fragrance of the flowers. They walked side by side, their hands occasionally touching naturally and intimately. Livia laughed at Nicholas's jokes, feeling lighter and happier than she had in a long time. Did you know my goal in the last game was considered the most epic of the month? Nicholas joked with a mischievous smile. Livia laughed, shaking her head. Oh, sure, Mr. Top Scorer. Do you want a trophy or just a celebratory ice cream? I think I'll go for the ice cream, he said, holding her hand and leading her to a nearby ice cream shop. At the cafe, their conversations were equally light and affectionate. They shared childhood stories, dreams for the future, and even silly secrets they wouldn't tell anyone else. One rainy afternoon, they met in a charming cafe in the Wicker Park neighborhood, where they spent hours talking and laughing. I always wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid, Livia confessed, laughing. But I gave up when I found out I'm afraid of heights. Nicholas laughed, holding her hand across the table. I wanted to be a superhero. Sometimes I still do. Small gestures of affection became common. Meaningful glances, subtle touches on the shoulder, hands finding each other under the table without noticing. Each encounter seemed to bring them closer, creating a bond that both deeply valued. Nicholas was eager to introduce Livia to his friends. One evening, he organized a small gathering at his apartment, inviting Paul and a few other soccer buddies. Livia arrived a bit early, helping Nicholas prepare everything. The way she integrated into the simple tasks of his home, as if she were already part of that space, was comforting. "Do you think they'll like me?" Livia asked, a bit nervous as she chopped vegetables for the snacks. "I'm sure they will," Nicholas replied, kissing her forehead affectionately. "Just like I do." When the friends arrived, the atmosphere filled with laughter and soccer stories. Jacob, the closest to Nicholas, was the first to strike up a conversation with Livia. "So, you're the famous Livia Nicholas keeps talking about?" Jacob said with a welcoming smile. Livia blushed slightly. "I hope he's only said good things." Of course, only good things," Jacob joked. Because if he said anything bad, I'd have to disagree. "You seem great." The acceptance was immediate. Livia proved to be a present and participative companion, laughing at the jokes, asking questions, and genuinely showing interest in Nicholas's friends' stories. By the end of the night, she was already exchanging numbers with the girlfriends of Nicholas's friends, planning future meetups. Nicholas watched everything with a satisfied smile. Seeing Livia fit in so well with his social circle warmed his heart. More and more, he felt lucky to have her by his side. That night, as the guests said their goodbyes, Nicholas and Livia stayed on the couch, exhausted but happy. "You're amazing, you know that?" he said, stroking her hair. "You too," she replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for letting me be a part of all this." Over time, Nicholas and Livia became inseparable. She accompanied him to his soccer games, cheering enthusiastically from the stands, and he surprised her with unexpected visits at work, bringing small treats. Weeks turned into months, and their relationship only grew stronger. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon at Nicholas's house. The raindrops gently tapped against the windows, creating a soothing melody that filled the room. The apartment was cozy and quiet. Nicholas and Livia were on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching a movie and enjoying the comfort of a lazy day together. Suddenly, the sound of a message notification interrupted the peace. Nicholas picked up his phone from the coffee table and saw a message from a familiar, but unexpected number. It was from his ex-girlfriend, Amanda. "We need to talk. It's urgent." Nicholas felt a knot in his stomach. It had been months since he'd heard from Amanda, and there was no reason for her to need to talk to him now. He decided to ignore the message, placing his phone back on the table with an irritated gesture. Livia, who was nestled beside him, noticed the change in his mood. "Is everything okay, Nicholas?" "Who was it?" she asked, trying not to sound worried. Nicholas forced a smile, trying to push away the tension. "Oh, nothing important. Just a work message. Let's keep watching the movie." Livia wasn't entirely convinced, but decided not to press the issue. However, Nicholas's mind was far from the movie now. He tried to focus on the screen, but thoughts about what Amanda could want kept invading his mind. Minutes passed slowly. Nicholas picked up his phone again, curiosity and anxiety beginning to dominate him. He opened Amanda's message and reread it. The urgency in her words seemed to echo in his mind, but he knew he didn't want to open that door to the past. He got up from the couch, needing a moment to think. "I'm going to get another beer. Do you want anything?" he asked Livia. "No, I'm fine." "But are you okay?" "You seem worried," Livia said, her eyes filled with genuine concern. Nicholas gave a quick, tight smile. "I'm fine, really. Just a bit of a headache. I'll get some medicine and be right back." He went to the kitchen, where he opened the fridge and grabbed a beer, trying to use the moment to collect himself. Amanda's message continued to bother him. He knew that ignoring it wouldn't be enough, but he also didn't want to bring this into the life he was building with Livia. Returning to the living room, Nicholas tried to act naturally, but the tension was palpable. Livia continued to watch his behavior, worried. "And Nicholas, I really feel like something is bothering you. Can you tell me what's going on?" She insisted, this time more firmly. "It's complicated, Livia. It's something from the past that I don't want to bring into the present," Nicholas said, trying to steer the conversation away. Please, don't worry. Let's just enjoy the afternoon." Livia nodded slowly, still suspicious, but decided to give Nicholas some space. The movie continued playing on the TV, but the previously relaxed atmosphere was now filled with tension. Then, suddenly, a knock on the door interrupted the silence. Nicholas froze for a moment, feeling a chill run down his spine. The knock was firm and determined, as if the person on the other side had an unwavering purpose. "Are you expecting someone?" Livia asked, surprised. "No. I'm not," Nicholas replied, standing up with a bad feeling. He walked slowly to the door. When he finally opened it, there stood Amanda, his ex-girlfriend, drenched from the rain, with a grave expression on her face. "And Nicholas, we need to talk." "Now," Amanda said, her voice filled with urgency and desperation. Nicholas felt the world spin for a moment. He stepped back, allowing her to enter, while Livia watched the scene with a mix of confusion and concern. Who is she, Nicholas?" Livia asked, feeling the tension rise. Nicholas took a deep breath, feeling the pressure build. "Livia, this is Amanda, my ex-girlfriend. She said she needs to talk to me about something urgent." Amanda looked directly at Nicholas, her expression indicating that the news she brought would change everything. The tension in the air was almost palpable. Nicholas's living room, once a refuge of peace, was now filled with tension. Amanda, his ex-girlfriend, stood there, drenched from the rain, bringing with her an air of urgency and desperation. Livia, sitting on the couch, looked at both of them with a mixture of confusion and concern. Nicholas, standing near the door, felt a knot forming in his stomach. Amanda took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "And Nicholas, I really didn't want to show up like this, but I had no choice. I discovered something serious." Nicholas frowned, his heart racing. What's going on, Amanda? Why are you here?" She looked directly at him, her eyes filled with tears. "I was diagnosed with HIV, Nicholas. And, you need to get tested too." The room fell silent. The shock was immediate and overwhelming. Nicholas felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Livia brought her hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. How did this happen?" Nicholas managed to ask, his voice trembling. Amanda wiped away her tears, trying to stay calm. "I don't know exactly. I was diagnosed a few weeks ago and I'm still trying to understand all of this. But the doctor said all my recent sexual partners need to be tested. And you were one of them." Nicholas shook his head, trying to process the information. This is impossible. I've always been careful." "I know," Amanda replied, her voice low and filled with sadness. But we need to face this reality. It's important that you get tested, Nicholas." Livia, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. So, does this mean I need to get tested too?" The question came out in a whisper, reflecting the growing panic in her mind. "Yes," Amanda said, looking at Livia with sympathy. "If you have an intimate relationship, it's crucial that both of you get tested." Nicholas looked at Livia, feeling a wave of guilt and worry. "Livia, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Livia took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "It's not your fault, Nicholas. But we need to deal with this. We need to get tested. The urgency in Livia's voice brought Nicholas back to reality. He nodded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. You're right. We can't wait. Let's go to the lab right away. Amanda wiped away another tear. Nicholas, I really hope you both are okay. Nicholas looked at her, anger and fear mixing in his heart. I hope so too, Amanda. With those words, Nicholas and Livia prepared to go to the lab. The journey to the lab was silent and tense, each lost in their own dark thoughts. Upon arriving, the clinical and impersonal environment heightened their sense of anxiety. At the reception, Nicholas quickly explained the situation. The receptionist, sensing the urgency, directed them to a waiting room where they would be seen shortly. Livia squeezed Nicholas's hand, trying to find strength in his presence. We'll get through this together, Nicholas, she said, attempting a reassuring smile. He squeezed her hand back. Yes, together. We'll figure out what's going on and deal with it. When Nicholas and Livia's names were called, they stood up, exchanging one last look of mutual support. The nurse led them to a private room where their blood samples would be taken. We'll run the tests, and you'll receive the results in a few days, the nurse explained, trying to reassure them. Nicholas and Livia nodded, undergoing the procedure with a mix of fear and hope. The wait would be torturous. As they left the lab, the rain had stopped, but the weight of the dark clouds still hung over them. On the way back home, Nicholas felt the need to speak. Livia, I'm really sorry about this. I never wanted to put you in danger. Livia looked at him, her eyes still full of worry, but also determination. I know, Nicholas. And let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll wait for the results. But regardless of what happens, we'll face it together. When they arrived home, the sense of urgency lessened a bit, replaced by anxious waiting. They sat on the couch in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The tranquility of the rainy afternoon had disappeared, giving way to a new reality filled with uncertainties and challenges. The impact of Amanda's revelation still reverberated, but now the priority was to deal with the present and face the future with courage and unity. On the day of the results, the atmosphere was heavy, reflecting the state of mind of Nicholas and Livia. They arrived at the testing clinic hand in hand, but the grip was weak, each absorbed in their own thoughts and fears. The clinical environment, with white walls and the distant sound of murmuring voices, heightened the sense of anxiety. As soon as they entered, they were directed to the waiting room. Nicholas could feel his heart beating faster with each passing minute. Livia was beside him, but the emotional distance between them seemed greater than ever. They both knew the next moments could change their lives forever. Time seemed to pass slowly, and the wait was almost unbearable. Each time the door opened, they jumped, only to see another person called. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the nurse called their names. Nicholas and Livia, please come with me. They stood up together, exchanging a look of mutual support, but the tension was palpable. They followed the nurse to a small private room, where a doctor awaited them with the results. The doctor, a middle-aged man with a kind expression, looked at both of them before speaking. Let's start with the good news. Livia, your results came back negative for HIV. Livia exhaled a sigh of relief, feeling a massive weight lifted off her shoulders. But when she looked at Nicholas, her expression of relief mixed with worry and fear. Now, Nicholas, the doctor continued, looking directly at him. Unfortunately, your test came back positive for HIV. Nicholas's world crumbled at that moment. It felt like he had been punched in the stomach, and the air seemed to have been sucked out of the room. Livia put her hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. How is this possible? Nicholas managed to murmur, his voice trembling. I was always so careful. The doctor nodded understandingly. I know it's hard, Nicholas. But it's important to remember that with proper treatment, you can live a long and healthy life. We'll refer you to a specialist who can help you start treatment immediately. Livia, still processing the news, moved a little away from Nicholas. He noticed the change in her, the physical distance reflecting an emotional barrier. Olivia, I'm so sorry. I didn't want this to happen, Nicholas said, his voice laden with despair. She looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. And Nicholas, I don't know if I can handle this. I want a normal life. But we can get through this together, he pleaded, feeling on the brink of desperation. I'll start treatment, I'll do whatever it takes. Please, don't leave me now. Livia shook her head, stepping back further. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. I'm sorry, Nicholas, but I need to think about myself. She ran out of the room, tears streaming down her face. Nicholas tried to follow her, but his legs felt like lead. He stood there, staring at the open door, feeling more alone than ever. The doctor placed a hand on Nicholas's shoulder. It will be tough, but you're not alone. We'll help you through this. Nicholas nodded vaguely, still processing the overwhelming loss. Thank you, doctor, he said, his voice barely a whisper. When he finally left the clinic, the rain was beginning to fall, mirroring his somber mood. Nicholas walked aimlessly through the wet streets of Chicago, trying to find meaning in the new reality he found himself in. Each step felt heavy, each raindrop a reminder of what he had lost. He arrived home to a silent and empty living room. The couch where he and Livia had spent so many happy afternoons now seemed like a cruel reminder of the love that had dissipated. Sitting down, he let the tears fall freely, not trying to hold them back. The devastating revelation and the loss of Livia left a deep void. But deep down, Nicholas knew he needed to find the strength to move forward, no matter how unbearable the journey seemed at that moment. Nicholas's apartment was unrecognizable. The once cozy and well-kept space was now dark and disordered, reflecting his deep depression and isolation after the abrupt and painful separation from Livia. Empty beer bottles were scattered around the living room, dirty dishes piled up in the sink, and closed curtains blocking out the daylight painted a grim picture of despair. Nicholas spent his days locked inside, his heart heavy with the absence of Livia and the impact of the diagnosis. He drowned in memories, reliving happy moments with her. Her laughter, the way she looked at him, each memory felt like torture. He repeatedly wondered where he had gone wrong and why life had become so unbearably difficult. One afternoon, while staring at a photo of Livia on his phone, the sound of knocking on the door broke the silence. Nicholas initially ignored it, but the knocking persisted, followed by a familiar voice. Nicholas, it's me, Amanda. Please, open the door. He hesitated but finally got up and went to the door, opening it slowly. Amanda stood there, with a look of concern on her face. She looked him over, noting the deplorable state of the apartment and Nicholas's disheveled appearance. Nicholas, we need to talk, Amanda said, entering without waiting for an invitation. He closed the door and collapsed onto the couch, too drained to argue. What do you want, Amanda? I heard about what happened with you and Livia. I'm so sorry, she began, sitting beside him. But you can't go on like this. You need help. Nicholas shook his head, sadness evident in his eyes. I don't know if I can, Amanda. Everything feels so impossible. Amanda placed her hand on his shoulder, a gesture of support. I know it's hard, but you're not alone in this. I came here to help. Let's go to the doctor. He can explain the treatment better and how you can live a normal life. Nicholas looked at her, his resistance beginning to dissolve in the face of her compassion. What if there's no hope? What if everything stays this way? There is hope, Nicholas, Amanda insisted. You don't have to face this alone. Let's do this together, please. After a long moment of silence, Nicholas finally nodded. Okay, I'll go. But only because you're asking me to. Amanda gave a slight smile. That's a start. Let's go. She helped him up, and together they left the apartment. On the way to the clinic, Amanda talked about how she had dealt with her own diagnosis, the challenges she had faced, and how she had begun to see life from a new perspective after starting treatment. When they arrived at the doctor's office, Nicholas was nervous, but Amanda stayed by his side, holding his hand in a gesture of solidarity. The doctor greeted them with a welcoming smile, noticing Nicholas's anxiety. Hello, Nicholas. I'm Dr. Roberts. Let's talk a bit about your diagnosis and the treatment options available. Nicholas nodded, trying to mentally prepare for the conversation. Dr. Roberts patiently and clearly explained about HIV, how the virus worked, and the treatment options that could help Nicholas live a long and healthy life. He talked about the importance of starting antiretroviral treatment as soon as possible and how it could reduce the viral load to undetectable levels, making the virus non-transmissible. Life goes on, Nicholas, Dr. Roberts said in an encouraging tone. With proper treatment, you can have a normal life, do your activities, work, and have relationships. The most important thing is not to give up. Amanda squeezed Nicholas's hand, conveying strength. Did you hear that, Nicholas? There is hope. You can overcome this. The doctor's words and Amanda's support began to penetrate Nicholas's armor of despair. He saw a small ray of hope amidst the darkness surrounding him. I'll try, doctor. I want to start the treatment. Dr. Roberts smiled. Great. We'll get started as soon as possible. Amanda, can you help Nicholas with the first steps? Of course, I'm here for that, she replied. Leaving the clinic, Nicholas felt a weight slowly lifting. There was a long road ahead, but he was no longer alone. Amanda was by his side, and her support was a pillar of strength he hadn't expected. Back at the apartment, Amanda helped Nicholas tidy up the place, bringing new energy to the space. Let's do this together, as she said as they cleaned and organized. Nicholas felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of gratitude and renewed determination. Thank you, Amanda. I don't know what I would do without you. You don't have to do this alone, Nicholas. And I know you're going to get through this. With a slight smile, Nicholas decided that despite the challenges, he was ready to face the future with courage and hope. The journey would be difficult, but he was no longer in complete darkness. There was light ahead, and he was determined to follow it, one step at a time. The following months were transformative for Nicholas. He began his treatment at the clinic with determination, attending all appointments and strictly following medical guidelines. Each day, he felt his body responding positively to the medication, and tests confirmed the viral load was decreasing, and he was becoming undetectable. The early days were tough, but Nicholas found strength in small steps and daily victories. Initially, trips to the treatment clinic in Chicago were filled with fear and uncertainty, but over time, they became part of a new routine of self-care and hope. Amanda's continuous support was crucial. She accompanied him to many appointments, always offering words of encouragement. You're doing very well, Nicholas, said Dr. Roberts during one of the follow-up appointments. Your viral load is undetectable. Keep it up, and you'll be able to live a long and healthy life. Nicholas felt a wave of relief. Thank you, doctor. I don't know what I'd do without the support. As his physical health improved, Nicholas also began working on his emotional recovery. He reconnected with friends he had distanced himself from during the months of depression. Paul, his longtime friend, was one of the first to notice him back on the soccer field. It's good to see you back, Nicholas, Paul said with a sincere smile. We missed you on the team. I missed this too, Nicholas replied, feeling the warmth of camaraderie as he tied his cleats. Returning to playing soccer, Nicholas found new energy and purpose. The sport not only helped him maintain his physical fitness, but also gave him a sense of normalcy and belonging that he desperately needed. Each game, each goal, was a reminder that he could still live life to the fullest. During this period of recovery, Nicholas decided not to reach out to Livia. The pain of her departure was still an open wound, but he began to realize that her love was not as true as he had thought. The decision to move on without her was difficult but necessary. Life goes on, and I need to find my own happiness, he told Amanda as they chatted in a cafe. I realize now that I need someone willing to face any challenge with me. Amanda nodded, smiling. You deserve someone like that, Nicholas. And you will find them. In time, Nicholas started dating again, but this time with a new perspective. He was more cautious and confident. Each relationship was an opportunity to learn more about himself and what truly mattered. He met new people, some of whom became important friends, while others provided valuable experiences. One of these people was Emily, an intelligent and compassionate woman he met in a support group for people living with HIV. They began spending time together, and Nicholas found in Emily a deep understanding and unwavering support. I understand what you're going through, Emily said during one of their outings. And I'm here for you, without judgment. This new phase of his life brought many reflections. Nicholas realized that his condition did not define who he was. He learned to avoid prejudice, both from others and himself. He accepted his condition and made it part of his story, but not the only part. In the end, Nicholas focused on living healthily and happily. He adopted a routine of exercise, balanced eating, and regular checkups. The depression that once consumed him began to dissipate, giving way to renewed optimism. On a sunny Sunday, while playing soccer with his friends, Nicholas paused for a moment and looked around. The sounds of laughter, the feeling of the sun on his skin, and the simple pleasure of being alive and healthy filled him with gratitude. You look happy, man, Paul said, patting Nicholas on the back after a successful play. Nicholas smiled, feeling the truth in Paul's words. I am, Paul. And this is just the beginning. Thus, Nicholas moved forward, living each day with the conviction that, no matter what happened, he was in control of his life and ready to make the most of every moment.